All right, I want to say ETM Hotep, which is welcome and peace. This is your brother Wujao Meneb Iri Ma'at, and I'm also in the company of a few of the Seshu Mani Medew Netcher members. We have son Satepin Ra, which is brother Satepin Ra, and we have sonette Emiket, sister Emiket. So I don't know if you all want to just kind of greet everyone before we jump in.
Peace to the chat. Peace to the panel members. Satep.
Hotep is Imikit, and yeah, just here to enjoy the show.
All right, okay. All right, so I want to welcome everyone again and show my appreciation for anyone who's tuned in live to our discussion. And then, of course, anyone who will be watching this as an archive video. And speaking of which, I do want to keep this video as concise as possible, bite-sized and not too long. So I titled it a discussion and review, Cheikh Anta Diop's The Egyptians as They Saw Themselves. And this is part one, which reserves any future parts in case, this may get a little long. All right. So in case we had to break this up into different parts. All right. So for those who are not familiar, the article title, The Egyptians as They Saw Themselves, is coming out of volume 2 of the General History of Africa, produced by the UNESCO. All right. So if you have that, this is what I'm referring to. And if you don't have it, shame on you, first of all. And second, just make sure you get it. It's get all the volumes. There's several volumes to that series. It's produced by the UNESCO, General History of Africa, and it's several volumes. This particular article is in volume 2. All right. And I had a picture of the cover as the thumbnail. So if you saw this video prior to us going live, you would see the cover. And I may show it again before we close out. All right. So make sure you get it. And so let me give you all the intention of this discussion and the topic. So I'm sure everyone's heard about the long-standing debate. I mean, this debate has been going on for decades now, but it goes in hibernation and then it will resurface and be talked about, and then it'll go into hibernation, it'll come back forth, and it'll surface again. So it's on and off for decades, as I said. And the topic is the meaning of the place name Kemet. And so recently, as of last year, toward the latter part of last year, the conversation has, surfaced again and became an intense conversation among various different people. So in that discussion, a lot of people are, being a little confused because there's a couple of different opinions that are being pushed or claimed, and people are listening and they sound good, but people are walking away really not knowing what's what. And so what we've been doing, and by we, I mean the Seshu Mani Medew Netcher, along with the brother Asar Motep and the brother Sanjeti, we've been doing various different posts on social media, various different discussions on YouTube, and now we've even written a publication of essays, and our efforts are to clarify the issue and to explain to people what's really going on, what the real issues are, and explain the methods on solving the issues, what the questions are, and their answers. Okay, so that's what this effort is all about. And so what I want to do in this discussion is to go all the way back to the source from which a lot of people are getting their claims from. And so in this particular case, it's coming from our late and great ancestral scholar, Cheikh Anta Diop. All right. He's done a lot of work. This particular article is entitled The Egyptians as They Saw Themselves. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk through it and give some commentary as we walk through it, because a lot of people are hearing the claims and getting the opinions of people about the claims, but they're not reading the material themselves. All right, so just wanted to offer that for everyone and to give some commentary about it. All right, so let's go straight to it, and give me a second here. And so this is the particular article, and as I said, this is coming out of the General History of Africa, Volume 2. And let me get my cursor over here. Okay, and this is coming from page 41. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to scroll up because this is a section of a larger article. So I'm going to scroll up to the beginning of the articles just so you all know where we are in the book and the title of the entire article written by Diop. All right. So if we go up to the top, here's the chapter, or this particular chapter in this volume. Okay, so it's called Origin of the Ancient Egyptians by Cheikh Anta Diop. All right, so within this chapter, there are several sections. So, for example, evidence of physical anthropology on race of the ancient Egyptians. And then we scroll and scroll, and we'll see another section. Human images of the proto-historic period, their anthropological value, and so on and so forth. So these are sections within this particular chapter, and so the one that we're about to discuss is further down. I'm gonna go back to it. All right, so here we are. So the Egyptians as they saw themselves is the title of this particular section. All right, so we're just gonna walk through it, and anybody on the panel chime in if you have any commentary or comments or any questions, points that you would like to make. Just let me know. Feel free to interrupt me. And then also, I always love interaction, so I will get to the chat. And so if you have any questions in the chat, make sure that you document it or write it or type it up so that you don't forget. And then when I finish certain points being made, then I'll check out the chat. All right, so the Egyptians as they saw themselves. So I'm just going to read. Now, mind you, before all of this, Diop was going through other areas of disciplines of science to show the origins of the ancient Egyptians, talking about the skulls, and so on and so forth. Okay, so just kind of give you a little context. And so by the time we get here, he's raising the point of the Egyptians as they saw themselves. How did they see themselves? So to read, it says, it is no waste of time to get the views of those principally concerned. So in other words, let's get the views of the Egyptians themselves. How did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? That's the question. Into which ethnic category did they put themselves? What did they call themselves? And then those are the questions. So it's 3 questions. How did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? Into which ethnic category did they put themselves? And then the third one, what did they call themselves? So those are 3 questions that are raised. And then he goes on to say, the language and literature left to us by the Egyptians of the pharaonic epoch supply explicit answers to these questions, which the scholars cannot refrain from minimizing, twisting, or interpreting. So in other words, he's saying these 3 questions are answered within the language and literature left by the Egyptians themselves. And so much so that scholars can't, minimize or twist it. So it's blatant. Okay, it's overt. All right, so that's what the first paragraph says. But before moving forward, what I want to do is go back to this first question. How did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? Now, let me just ask, I guess any one of you on the panel, in order to answer that question, what's one of the things that we can use to answer that question? As far as coming out of Egypt, because as he said, the language and the literature left to us by the Egyptians supplies explicit answers. So, what primary source or sources can we use to help us answer this first question? How did the Egyptians see themselves?
Okay. Were you trying to say something sensitive?
No, you can go
No.
ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I think a good obviously we'd have to go to a primary text, and a good primary text would have to be one where we have the Egyptians and their neighbors, and then we'd have to go through that text and see how they, if we'll find a name that the Egyptians use for themselves, and then of their immediate neighbors. That would be helpful.
Okay, all right. So that's good. But I just want to I want you to keep in mind that the question is, how did the ancient Egyptians see themselves, not call themselves? That's the other question. So we're not looking for a name at this point.
Okay, I got you. How did they see themselves?
Yes.
So probably a whole different types of text in this scenario.
All right. So I'll just let everyone know. The way that the Egyptians saw themselves is the way that they depicted themselves in the artwork. Remember, seeing is what you see with your eyes. Okay. So if we have to ask the question, how did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? They saw themselves how they portrayed themselves. Okay. And so we turn to the artwork within Egypt, the plethora of artwork that we have to this very day coming from ancient Egypt as primary sources. Okay. So the question, remember, how did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? All right. So we can take clues by how they represented themselves. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah.
All right. So this is what, at the very least, this is what the ancient Egyptians wanted others to see themselves as. Okay. If you had to paint yourself or carve yourself or create a statue or a likeness of yourself, you're going to do it in a way that you want others to see you. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, so now with that said, and like I said, I'm walking through this very slow because I want everyone to be clear on all of these points within this section or within this text. All right, so let me switch over and I'm going to explore that. So remember the question. What is the question again? The question is, how did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? All right, so, and hopefully you all can see my screen. And so here's part one. So here's the non-technical. So this has nothing to do with any specialty in the language. This has nothing to do with any specialty with the grammar of the language or anything of that nature. So this is why I call it non-technical. All right. This is open to any and everybody. There's no prerequisite knowledge that you have to have. All right. So here's the question. Question number one. If the kingdom of ancient Egypt's name, which is Kemet, if it means black and refers to the skin color of its inhabitants, then does this reflect in how the inhabitants portrayed themselves in art and inscriptions? Okay, so in other words, if the people of ancient Egypt, if they called their country by a name that means black to them, and they did so in reference to their skin color, then this question is, does that reflect in how they portrayed themselves in their own artwork? Okay, so does that question make sense?
100%.
Okay. All right. So now here's some statements or some things that everyone should consider. Okay. So number one, Naming conventions are of very high importance in African communities. Okay, this is something that everyone pretty much knows, that names are very, very important to not only African communities, but indigenous communities around the world. All right, it's just that us in the modern era, especially here in the United States, way we name things has spilled over into being arbitrary. Okay, so it wasn't like that before. Number two, the king was the highest representation for the kingdom and its people, after which a hierarchical administration and officials. Okay, so you have this hierarchy in ancient Kemet, with the king being the highest representation of the kingdom and the people. Okay. Number three, there's a plethora of material artifacts from ancient Kemet dating from its beginning to its end, and approximately spanning a time period of 3,500 years. Okay, and I put 3,500 years as a low acceptable range, because you do have people claiming that Kemet lasted for 10,000 years. Some people say 25,000, and so on and so forth. So we're just going to keep it at the lowest, where no one should have any problems with accepting it at the least 3,500 years. Okay. And number four, the scribes of ancient Kemet had access and materials to produce various pigments for their craft. And by their craft, I mean painting, carving, drawing, the glyphs, the vignettes, which are the scenes within that accompany the glyphs, etc., etc. Okay, so they had all the materials to produce various different pigments, and examples are black, red, white, green, etc. Okay, so they had access to that material. So, with that question being asked and these statements to keep in mind, now what I want to show you all is exactly how did the Egyptians portray themselves. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to briefly go through in chronological order some of the dynasties. And for time's sake, I can't show you a whole lot of pictures. So what I recommend those who are watching this live and who are watching in the archives, take some time out and Google every dynasty. For example, type in Google and say, let me just let you know, the first and second, the early dynasties, is very hard to find artifacts that still retain the colors, any paint and things on them. So just to let you know that. But if you find it, hey, that's very good. But what I want you to do is Google every dynasty and then go to images and just look at all the different images. And that's just a faster way of looking for these pictures. So Google first dynasty of Egypt, second dynasty Egypt, third dynasty of Egypt, etc., and look at the pictures of the various different tombs or statues or anything that still has its color. Okay. And so what I'm doing is I'm giving you a brief example of those. All right. So we're going to start with the third dynasty. Like I said, the first and second dynasty, it's hard to find material that retains its actual original painting and pigments on it. Okay. So I'm skipping to the third dynasty. So here's a statue out of the Cairo Museum of King Djoser. Okay. And as you can see, his hair is black. The beard is black, but his skin color as painted is not black. Okay. The hair is Kim. The beard is Kim, meaning black, the adjective black. The face is not Kim. Okay. It is a reddish brown. And people describe this color slightly differently depending on what scholar you're reading or who you're talking to. So for the sake of you all listening, this particular shade of brown is sometimes called tawny. It's sometimes called reddish brown. Some people just refer to it as brown, and maybe other words, but those are the main ones that you'll see. Okay, reddish brown. All right, so I simply say reddish brown. All right, so that's Djoser. That's third dynasty now, and like I said, you can find a whole bunch of pictures, but I'm just showing one. Okay, so that's the third dynasty. So all right, now we're going to the fourth dynasty. This is the fourth dynasty of Ka-Eper. All right, and if you look him up, you'll find he has a big statue of him. He has that little pot belly and things. but this is an actual carving of him. And so you can see the color of his skin is not black, but his hair is black. So his hair is Kim. His skin is not. Okay. It is reddish brown. All right. So that's the 4th dynasty. So let's march forward. We're still in the 4th dynasty. Here's a statue of Yai Ib and his consort wife. And his hair is Kim, black, but his skin is not. His skin is reddish brown. All right. Let's keep on going forward. 5th dynasty, the tomb of Princess Idut, Shes Sashat. Okay. And if you look at the figures here within the tomb, they are reddish brown. The hair is black though. The hair is Kim, but the skin color is reddish brown. All right. Another 5th dynasty tomb, the Mastaba of T. So we see him sitting in the seat here, reddish brown. We see the other figures here within the tomb. This is also in the same tomb, different wall. We see the figures here, reddish brown, but their hair is black. Kim. All right. So keep it in mind. Matter of fact, we have a black bull here, or cow. Can't see the front part. Then we have a spotted white, a black and white cow here. All right. So keep that in mind. So we're at the 5th dynasty. So let's keep moving forward. So here we have the 6th dynasty, the mastaba or the tomb of Mereruka. Okay. All of the figures here are reddish brown. The hair is black. It's kind of faded here, but it's black. All right. So keep that in mind. Another 6th dynasty tomb of the vizier Nebef, and everyone in here is reddish brown. The hair is Kim, black. Their skin is reddish brown. Okay, so by now you should understand that the scribes had all the abilities to paint the people's skin black because they had access to the color black. They painted the hair black, but they didn't paint their skin black. All right, so I just want to point that out. Let's go to another 6th dynasty. I think this is the same tomb. Yeah, it's the same tomb, clearer picture. So we have his wife and himself here, reddish brown. Hair is black, skin is reddish brown. All right, let's keep going. So I'm going to kind of speed this up. So now we go to the first intermediate period because remember, dynasties 1 through 6 represent the Old Kingdom, and then we come into a first intermediate period. And just as an FYI, the first intermediate period, I suggest you read up on it, but as a very short summary, the first intermediate period represents civil unrest, where you had a civil wars or squabbles within the kingdom itself. Now, mind you, during this entire time, the Old Kingdom, what we call Kemet now, ancient Kemet now, was not called ancient Kemet. Okay, Kemet was not called Kemet at this particular time, not yet. All right, Kemet was not called Kemet until the 11th dynasty. All right, so just keep that in mind. But this particular period is the intermediate period is from dynasty 7 forward to the beginning of 11. Okay, so I'm just giving you the chronological time frame that we're in now. So this is the tomb stele of mdw, and you see him sitting here with his consort, and he's reddish brown. His hair is black. So again, another first intermediate period artifact. This is the stela of Henny. You see him painted reddish brown. Here's some more first intermediate period artifacts. Reddish brown, reddish brown, reddish brown. Hair is black. Hair is faded here, but hair is black on this one. All right. Now we get up to the 11th dynasty. This is the start of the Middle Kingdom. So this is the reunifier, Mentu Hotep II himself. All right. And this is at a point where Kemet started as a kingdom started to be called Kemet. Now, I'm pointing this out again because let's go back to the question here. If the kingdom of ancient Egypt's name, Kemet, means black, and it referred to the skin color of its inhabitants, does this reflect in how the inhabitants portray themselves in the art inscriptions? Now, by now, you could probably already answer that question, but let me continue forward, because this is the point where the kingdom was called Kemet, but the king, the person who was reigning king at that time, Kemet was called Kemet, was not portrayed as the skin color black. All right. So this is Mentuhotep, and this is his picture. You can see his name within the Shinu. And so this is King Mentu or Montuhotep. All right. So this is the 11th dynasty. Now we move into the 12th dynasty. This is the tomb of the two brothers. Their skin color is reddish brown. The hair is black. All right. Now I want you to notice something, that when the scribes wanted to show a multitude of people, to represent a lot of people in an area, like a group of people, what they did was they would slightly alter the shade of the colors and alternate. So here you have a one shade of reddish brown, and then next to this figure you have a little darker shade of reddish brown, and then back to the lighter one, darker one, lighter one, darker one, etc. This is a way in which the scribes at the time would represent a multitude of people. Okay, so they would alternate to give that effect. All right, so just as an FYI. All right, now we're moving to, now I jump from the 12th dynasty all the way to the 18th dynasty, because in between this time you have the second intermediate period. Okay, and this is where the Hyksos come into play, and so on and so forth. And the artifacts that you find, you don't find as many artifacts that retain their color in the ways that I've been showing so far. Now you can find them, but it takes a while for you to hunt those down. So I'm skipping to the 18th dynasty. All right. The 18th dynasty, like I said, plus for time's sake, I don't want to show a whole lot of pictures here. So his 18th dynasty tomb of Wasserhat, and you see everyone here is reddish brown. All right. Even the woman, and normally the women are represented in a yellowish gold pigment, and that's for a whole other reason. So that was the 18th dynasty. Here's the 19th dynasty. This is King Seti I from his temple in Abydos. And so this is King Seti right here. You see his name in the Shinu above him, and there's several pictures of him within this temple. 19th dynasty. Now we move to the 20th dynasty. This is the tomb of Enherkau, and you see his skin pigment shade is a reddish brown. Moving forward, another 20th dynasty king, Ramses III. His skin color is reddish brown. This is the third intermediate period. So this is after the Ramesside period. And so now we enter into a third intermediate period. And so here is a stela from Ankh-Aufmut. And you can see the skin color here is also reddish brown. And here's the tomb of Tanut Amen, last pharaoh of the 25th dynasty. Now, just as an FYI, everyone should know about the 25th dynasty, because they went by they, I mean scholars and, the media, various different media, they will characterize the 25th dynasty as the Nubian dynasty. Okay. As a matter of fact, I believe it was on the front cover of one of the famous magazines. I don't know if it was Time magazine or National Geographic, or one of those magazines where you see the king Taharka, and it said the Nubian pharaohs or the black pharaohs or something to that nature. But this is the last king of the 25th dynasty, and I just want you to note that the skin color is reddish brown. And here's another one from the 25th dynasty, Skin color for all three figures here is reddish brown. All right. So now, what does this mean? Now, just let me quickly show you all. Here's Mentuhotep on the left and also Mentuhotep on the right. So what I'm showing now are some of the very rare exceptions where you will see people depicted at a very dark pigment. And about 98%, 99% of all of the artwork for the ancient Egyptian men that are depicted in artwork are depicted with this reddish brown pigment. There are very rare occasions where certain figures are depicted in black, but it has a different connotation or different meaning for the reason why it's black. All right. And that calls for a whole nother discussion, but it has something to do with the funerary issues. Okay. And the deification of people. So to show this, for example, Mentuhotep, he's painted in a reddish brown, but his statue is darker. Okay. And there's a reason for that. Likewise, a lot of people like to turn to Ahmose Nefertari, which is the figure that you see here, painted black. Now, she's deified because she actually appears not only in her own stele or tomb, but she's also depicted in other people's tomb next to the deity Amen, also painted black. Okay. But here's another picture of her. Notice that she is not painted black. She's gold in color. And you see her name, Ahmose Nefertari. Okay. So either she's gold and spent a lot of time on the beach, or this particular representation of her has a different meaning. And, you know, like I said, in another conversation, maybe we can discuss those meanings there. All right. Now, to cap off this portion, what I want to show now, you all should be familiar with that there were 30 dynasties in Kemet. All right. After the 25th dynasty, from that dynasty forward, you have of course, you have the Greco-Roman period. The Ptolemies come into play, all right, and rule over Kemet, all right. So now we all know that the Ptolemies are from Europe, and this is a bust, I believe, of Ptolemy. I forget which one. I don't have the name readily right here, obviously. But this is one of the Ptolemies here. And everyone will agree, the consensus is that these are what we would call Europeans. All right. Not only Europeans, but people will call them white people, Caucasians, white people, or Europeans. This is what we would refer to these folks today. Okay. So now, with that in mind, and the Ptolemies come from that, and that's how they would be considered. The question is, when the Ptolemies ruled Kemet, how were they depicted on the walls? Well, let's find out. Here is a depiction of Ptolemaeus, one of the Ptolemies. Okay, on the right-hand side here. In the middle, you see the deity Amun-Ra, painted blue, and behind him, the deity Khonsu. All right, so in front of Amun-Ra, you have you have the pharaoh or the king Ptolemaeus, and you see his name in the Shenu. If anyone's confused about who this is, you can read his name in the Shenu. We have Ptolemaeus. Ptolemaeus Mir Ptah Ongjet. So it's Ptolemaeus, the beloved one of Ptah. May he live forever. Okay. But I want you to notice that although we would call these people European, Caucasian, or white people, they are depicted on the walls of Kemet as a reddish brown hue, the exact same reddish brown that was used for the indigenous rulers of Kemet. So I say that to say that The scribes for millennia, for over 3,000 years, the scribes had a canon. They had a stylization or a standard that they used to represent themselves to the world. So the question, so let's go back to the question. The question is, if the kingdom of ancient Egypt's name, Kemet, means black and refers to the skin color of its inhabitants, does this reflect in how the inhabitants portrayed themselves in the artwork and inscriptions? So I guess I'll ask that to the panel. So what's the answer to that question?
It's no. They didn't portray themselves as that. If as that, they used pretty much a consistent type of color, the reddish brown, and that was for any Egyptian, regardless of skin color. I think we see that also from the last artwork that you just put up.
Okay. Anybody else? We have a brother, Anihadet Kalfani, joined us. You got any comments on that?
Nin Sable.
Okay. So how about an answer?
Question number one. The kingdom of ancient Egypt's name, Kemet, means black. Referred to the skin color of the inhabitants, does it reflect in how the inhabitants portray them? Okay. I guess I do have a few things that I can say to answer this. For one, from my position of the understanding of this particular question, and based on what you just showed on the screen, they didn't go around and call themselves this because of what we further understand and know. So, does this reflect in how the inhabitants portrayed themselves in art inscriptions? No.
All right. Boy, you gave a long roundabout answer to say no. So let's just cut to the chase. All right. So
before you say, I just wanted to add something I think is very important, since you brought the artwork and how the Egyptians because clearly we're trying to answer the question that Diop put, and that was, how did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? So obviously the first thing would go to, like you said, and logically that would be the art and the different arts and the different inscriptions, because that's how they would put it. We know that we'll find it on the walls, on tombs. So clearly this is what the ancient Egyptians would want any person that comes in to see them, that this is us, this is who we are. So that's how they would want other people to see themselves, and that's how they wanted that's how they saw themselves. And you brought a good point. I think it was about the way that they had there's different hierarchies that they had within the administrations and officials, and all of that, to be when you look into their artworks, because everything that they want you to know about themselves, not just what you see, but certain intricate things that they do, or how how the administration is and their worldview is all put in those art and inscriptions. So even when you look at the art, sometimes, and even to answer the questions about the different hierarchies that they had, you definitely see that in the paintings as well. And I think that's what you have within what is called hierarchical proportions, what they use to, we use like scales and proportions when you're doing your artwork, where the king will appear larger than the regular subjects. The gods would appear, or the deities would appear much larger as well. So the artwork is there to for the Egyptians, ancient Egyptians, to actually they use that to tell you everything that you need to know about them. So if you're not seeing that black over there, they are not trying to tell you that, because everything is in the artwork. I just wanted to add that.
Okay, and that's a very good point, and that's the point that I'm hoping that everyone sees by now. So hopefully, for those of you in the chat and are watching this live, one, I really appreciate, we appreciate you taking the time out and hanging out with us. And then two, I want to make sure that you all get the point. So let me just quickly reiterate the point. The point is to answer this particular question. Let me go back to the question here. So again, I have the question highlighted. Now this is, again, I'm going back to Cheikh Anta Diop's section of his chapter within this particular volume of the UNESCO General History of Africa. All right. So the question is highlighted here. It says, how did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? Okay, that is the question. How did they see themselves? And I asked the question, where do we turn to? What is the most helpful thing that we could turn to in order to know how the Egyptians saw themselves? And the answer is in their artwork. Okay, because when you walk up and down the Nile or travel up and down the Nile and you see these tremendous statues, the tremendous temples and various different artifacts and so on and so forth, when they wanted to show you who they are, they put the figures of people, of the king, of different battle scenes, of different, all kinds of different things on the walls for everyone to see. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest monuments of a human being that's in Kemet, or at least the head of a human being, is what people call the Sphinx. Now, let me ask anybody on the panel, what color is the skin color of the face of the Sphinx that's still there to this very day? Is it, and I'll make it easy. Is it black or is it reddish brown?
Well, the Sphinx, it's more tan sanding because the color's faded. Or you talk about other depictions.
Well, yeah, it's mostly faded, but in the portions where the paint is still there, you can still see that it was reddish brown, right? So again, and first of all, let me welcome my brother Sanjeti on the panel, and so I'm gonna pass it to you. I know you have some things to contribute, but I'm just gonna establish these few points first. So again, we're answering. Diop asked a very good question. He said, how did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? And so I raised the question of where should we look to figure that out? What would be the most helpful? And the artwork is how the Egyptians would see themselves, because it's how they portray themselves to the rest of the world. Anyone traveling into Kemet would see these statues. They would see these temples. They would see all of this different artwork of the ancient Egyptians. So the question that I raise as a follow-up question, or a question that complements that, is that if the kingdom of ancient Egypt's name, Kemet, that we're all familiar with, if that means black and it refers to the skin color of the people, then the question is, does this reflect in how the inhabitants portrayed themselves in the inscriptions and in the artwork? And the answer, as I've just shown, is no, it does not. Because, and I'm only showing few pictures because of time's sake, but if you do this on your own, you can look and you'll see 99% of all of the pictures that still have their color to them, of adult men, not the women, because like I said, women were depicted in a yellowish gold for different reasons, and that's another discussion. But the men are reddish brown. Okay, just keep that in mind. And so so that's the point to be made. And so now let me see, make sure I'm not skipping over anything over here. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to this text. And I believe you all can still see this on the screen. No, you can't. All right, so let me go back to it. And we're going to get to another point. And I think this is where Sanjeti will have something to contribute. So I'm going to continue reading. All right, so we left off now. Like I said, these are three excellent questions. How did the Egyptians see themselves? Into which ethnic category did they put themselves? And what did they call themselves? All right, so now we're going to this next paragraph. So it says the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves, and then he gives a group of glyphs, which is transliterated as KMT, which we pronounce as Kemet. And then he says this means or equals the Negroes literally. And for those who may not know, in Spanish as well as French, Negro or Negro means black. Okay, so but there's a footnote here. But I want to make sure everybody understands that the statement is made, or the claim is made, that the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves. And this is the term that's given. Kemet. Looking like this. We have the I6, for those who are familiar with the Gardner code of the glyphs. I6, X1 for the bread loaf, A1, and B1. And then we have Z2, which will be the three strokes. Okay, if you need to know which glyphs those are. Now, let's read the footnote, though. Come down here to the footnote. It says, this important discovery was made on the African side by Sosu Nsugen, who was to compile this part of the present chapter. Now, we've read this before, but I want to just point out some, as a FYI, or maybe something that maybe you all may feel the same way, is that the way this is worded, one is that this glyph here was discovered by this particular person, but this particular person was supposed to write this section of Diop's article, but it implies that he didn't do it, because it says who was to compile. It doesn't say who compiled it, or the present author, or et cetera, et cetera. It says who was to compile. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm not sure, but this is the way that it reads, that he was supposed to compile this part of the chapter, but didn't do it. All right. But nevertheless, attribution is given to him for this discovery. Now, what's interesting is that the UNESCO, this was written after 1974. Am I correct? Maybe somebody on the panel can correct me if I'm wrong.
Tip.
Okay. So now, so the question is, now this word here is also found in as the footnote says. It says, for the sense of the word, see the Woordenboek der Egyptian Sprache, or the Dictionary of the Egyptian Language. Volume 5 is the German dictionary that we all refer to. Volume 5, 1971, and here are the pages. So if this was written after this word was already written in a dictionary, then I'm not sure how much you can discover something that was already in dictionaries, unless this is why he says on the African side, because this is a German dictionary. So that's the only way that would make sense, because it existed in a German dictionary at the very least since 1971. And then so it may have been discovered on the African side, meaning outside of the dictionary, by someone else later. Okay, so just kind of put some context to that. All right, so now it raises the question. So I want to ask a question. Is this statement true? So here's the statement again, the claim. The Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves, Kemet, meaning the Negroes literally. Is that true or false? And this is open to anybody on the panel.
I would say that statement is incorrect. So, at this point, what we're doing is upgrading the information. So what we've done, we've taken these words by, our great ancestor, Cheikh Diop, and we tested it out. For example, we would look for how many times or how many attestations do we have this term Kemet or Kemet to you referring to the people, and we check that against the number of other terms that the Egyptians referred to themselves. So number one, it is not the only term, as the records show. And when I do my screen share, I'll actually demonstrate this.
Okay.
In part. But yeah, that's my response to the question.
Okay. All right. So yeah. Anybody else have anything to add to that? All right. So we can keep it moving. Now for those who are watching, like I said, I love interaction, and I just want to make sure, and our method is to teach and to clarify and to share and to have the interaction. So I want to make sure that everyone in the chat, as much as possible, is following along. So, if you can give me a thumbs up or press 1 if everything is clear so far. And in the meantime, if nobody else has anything to add to that, Sanjay, if you wanted to share that. So let me just prep the question. So you can get ready to screen share, but let me prep the question. So now we realize that this statement that the Egyptians only had one term to designate themselves, regardless of what the term is, the number one aspect of this statement is incorrect. The Egyptians had more than one term to designate themselves. Okay, and so yeah, brother Sanjay, if you can show us another term outside of the one that's shown on the screen that's included in this article, what other term is used? And let me make sure I get it on your screen here.
Can you see?
Yep, I can see it. I don't know if you want to go full screen or you.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Okay, I'm gonna switch over to
you. See that?
Yeah, everybody can see it. Yep.
Okay, so during the conference, the ASCAP conference, the other weekend, in which Asari Motep and myself, you were represented, our side. This comes from, I added a few slides to Wu Jiao's presentation. So I took his place and I did his presentation for him. And then I added a few slides. These are some samples from the book. Now, this is the term remech. And after this, I'll go to Microsoft Word to show you a more extensive list.
Sanjay, so excuse me for 1 second. I forgot to do something, and I just hold your thought there for a hot second. And I told myself I would not forget, but I forgot. Just in case anyone who is wondering what Brother Sanjay just mentioned by book or our publication, and I mentioned it earlier, but I didn't show it. We wrote essays to complement the ASCAP conference to offer clarity, because during these conferences they only allow you but so many minutes to give a presentation. And this particular topic, and a lot of topics that we discuss, you can't explain it in 20 minutes. It's just impossible. And so, knowing that, we wrote a preliminary essay, a couple of essays, compiled it into a book format, and published it. And that's what you're seeing on the screen. It's called A Contribution to the Debate on the Meaning of the Place Name Kemet by the Shemsu Heru Research Team, which is myself, the brother Asari Motep, and the brother Sanjay. Okay, so I just want everyone to know this is what it's available. It's available on Amazon. A couple of people already got it. They've been posting their pictures on Facebook. Really appreciate the support, and we look forward to your commentary and questions. Okay, but make sure you all get it. Everybody who's watching, you need to get this, and this is only a prelude to a larger text that we're working on that's still in the works. All right, so I'm sorry about that, Sanjay. I'm gonna make sure everybody understands, can get that. So now it's back on your screen.
All right, no problem. Okay, so the term that is more frequently used is actually Remech ni Kemet. Now, Remech ni Kemet is which you might call an ethnic designator. And it's a term meaning people, the people of Kemet, or the inhabitants of Kemet. So in the course of collecting data, so I started going through the literature, starting with the old period. So we're talking about the first through the sixth dynasty. So I started scouring through the available documents that I personally have and look for the frequency of the term Kemetu and the term Remech. So if we go into the pyramid text, the frequency of the term Kemetu is 1 out of all of the pyramid text. So in the pyramid text, we have the text of Unas. We have the pyramid text of Teti. We have Pepi the First. We have Mernara. We have Pepi the Second, and then we have some other ones by some of the Nasutet or Nasitut, or you might translate it as queens. So out of all of them, the term Medew occurs once. And from my understanding, it's referring to the place Athribis, which is a city in the Delta region. It's like saying New York, New York. So it's a city called Kemet. Now, Remech occurs a minimum, at least it's in the 70s. So close to 80 times the term Remech is used. And keep in mind that the text of the pyramids of these various Nasut, they have duplicate texts. So we're not going to count the duplications because they share utterances, if you will. So almost 80 times is used. So if we go to the pyramid text of Pepi, 523, I'm just going to read the translations. The Netcher's contentment will transcend. The face of people will brighten and the Netcher's heart will become aroused. So where it says people, that's the term Remech. So the term Remech begins as a general word for people, group. And on the left side, you see that is the form of the word that is in that text. And is read from top to bottom, left to right, that particular text. And if we go down, now we're in the middle period or the middle kingdom. This is the story of the shipwrecked sailor. And episode 16, columns 181 through 182. Translation. So listen, high official. Look, it is good for people to listen. So then to the left, you see that is a form of the word. Written from top to bottom, read from right to left. Now, here's another Middle Egyptian, well, it's in Middle Egyptian literature, but stemming from the old period, 5th dynasty. So this comes from the instructions of Kagemi's father. From the conclusion, column 2, lines 3 through 4. It says this: so the Jati had his boys summoned after he came to understand the manner of people, their nature being what had come upon him. So on the left, you see that's the form of the word. See, there's variations. And if you go back to the sentence, you see the term Jati. That is a term that could be used like mayor of a city or governor. But I decided to leave this term untranslated simply because as R. Sebat, Raketi Amun, she uses the term culturally significant words. This is what we learn. This is what we learn as our students. All right. So I want to give you some more examples, but I'm going to go to a different slide here. So here we have the people of Kemet. So this is how it's written in the Sesh Medew Netcher here at the top. And then, of course, transliteration. And then here's the Coptic form. So no, we do not skip over Coptic. Okay. So this is this letter here, Rho, Mu, Nu, Kappa, Eta, Mu, Epsilon. So this is Remen Kimi. Okay. So the ch sound drops from here. So Rem. So actually that would be like Rome. Here is the preposition here. We know this is an indirect genitive here. And then Kime. Now, here's the tell of Sinuhe up here. Now, we see that this is the papyrus right here. This is the document. We like to go to the documents. Catalog Berlin Papyrus 10499. So this is where that document is to this day, housed in Berlin. Lines 32 through 34 says this. This met in we know we, that is a dependent pronoun. Remech Kemet. Into im hinayeth. Right, as far as this is the last sentence here. So down here. So my experience, Egyptians, as they have it, is Remech Kemet, who were there with him, having witness to me. So we know that this is a direct genitive relationship, Remech Kemet, or Remech Ni Kemet. And this is how it's found in the text. Now, of course, it's written in hieratic, but when you transcribe it in what I like to call formal Medew Netcher, this is how you have it. And this is the primary document here. So on this document, it doesn't refer to Egyptians as Kemet to you. It uses this, Remech Ni Kemet. I think that's it. That's the rest of yours. Yep. All right, so I'm going to stop this share here. I'm going to do a different share. All right. See if I pull this up a little bit. Okay. So here are some other forms. I'm not going to read all of these, but I'm just going to, let's take note of the forms of the word. Remech. Here, story of the shipwrecked sailor, story of Sinuhe. Keep going. We just we looked at this one. Let's keep going. Here's some other forms. This is from the instructions of Ptah-hotep. What old age does to people is bad in every respect. So this is the form of the word remech here. Most of these are read from right to left. Another Ptah-hotep, Maxim 5, line 99. You should not make plans by people. Here's this form here. Of course, there's more context around this. If you're with people, make a defendant a confidant for yourself. Ptah-hotep 13, this form. Same form here again. These coming from Ptah-hotep. This comes from the discourses of Khnum Anpu, the eloquent peasant, as they call it. Jacob Carruthers, that great ancestor, instead of saying eloquent peasant, he says the articulate farmer. So, we want to give honor and respect to him. This is the form of the word. See the difference here? This is the form of the word. in that text, in that line, the quote continues here to the next. Another foreman, discourses of Khnum and Ampu. A few more here. The debate between a man and his Ba, Ba's third speech. So we have the vertical columns. So here it's, instead of the tethered rope sign, it's the bread loaf sign, the T. So we're talking about dialectical variations here. It could still be pronounced Remech. From the Herdman's Tale, lines 3 through 4. I saw a woman in it who was not a human being. Okay. Of course, there's more context around this, so you have to read that account. The hymns of Senuseret III. Turn for people here. Here it is again. All right, here's other attestations. And of course, there's more. So I just wanted to just show that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Lastly, and then in the fuller work, you'll get the number of the times that the word Kemet to you is used for people. So I'm going to put both of those so you'll be able to see the data side by side. But that's just to show that Kemet is not the only term that's used, that the Egyptians used to designate themselves. But we want to call all attention to that attestation in the tale of Sinuhe, which says Remech in Kemet.
Okay. All right. So, so you said a whole mouthful, and I hope that everybody that's watching is following along. So again, like I said, I like to make sure everybody is still getting it. We didn't fly off the cliff with anybody. So if you are still following along, type 1. So give us some kind of indication that you are still with us and everything. All right. So, but just real quick. So just to kind of back up, I'm showing back on the screen the section within the article, the chapter. So the statement is made: the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves, and the term that's given to us in this text is the word Kemet, with these particular glyphs, which is again I6, X1, the bread loaf, A1, the kneeling man, B1, the squatting woman, and Z2, the 3 strokes. Okay, and that's transliterated as KMT, Kemet, and then it says that it means the Negroes, which in French would be black. Okay, and it says literally. So now what we've just demonstrated, Sanjeti just demonstrated, is that the statement is not true. And so as even Sanjeti characterized what we're doing, we are upgrading the information, because obviously, when we find new information, when we have access to new tools, new literature, new information, et cetera, we are to upgrade. We're to press forward, and that's one thing about science, is that it's always self-correcting. Okay, and that's simply what we're doing. Okay, I think I heard an echo here for a second. Okay, so all right, now what I would like to add to that real quick, though, is let me get it back on my screen. Where did it go? I have it right here. Okay. So what I want to show on my screen is, in addition, this is along with what the brother Sanjeti just shared with us, is that now when it came time for the ancient Egyptians to differentiate themselves or distinguish themselves from other people, be it their close neighbors or foreign neighbors, far neighbors, they always use the term remich, which is the term that Sanjeti showed variations of and everything. And so in particular, we have the tomb of Seti the First within a text that's called today is called the Book of Gates. Now, this text called the Book of Gates, it exists in many tombs, but in terms of it being illustrated by vignettes or scenery, it's in 3 tombs: the tomb of Seti the First, the tomb of Merneptah, and the tomb of Ramses the Third. Okay, the one I'm showing on the screen is a redrawing on the left of the tomb of Seti the First, and on the right hand side is an actual primary picture of the primary artifact itself. Okay, and so within the row of people, and so basically what this scene is, it's the fourth division or fifth division. It is the fourth division, the fifth hour, but the fourth division, but the fifth hour of the Book of Gates. And the Book of Gates, as an FY, is divided into 12 hours, 12 gates, 12 hours. And this particular scene is in the fourth division, the fifth hour. Now, in the original artifact, what you see is you see Heru here standing. And then in front of Heru, you're going to see 4 sets of 4 people for a total of 16 people. But obviously this picture is cropped and is cut off. So on the left-hand side is a reproduction of it. So if you imagine this top row of people being a continuation of this bottom row, just imagine it's a long row. So in short, the first group of 4 are the Egyptians themselves. The second group are the Asiatics. The third group here would be what today we call the Nubians. And then the last group is today what we would call the Libyans. But their indigenous name for the Egyptians would be the Remech. And we see that between the figures of each of these 4 people. If you look at the words, let's see if I can blow this up. You'll be able to see exactly what Sanjeti shared with the open mouth, the tethering rope, the kneeling man, squatting woman, and 3 strokes, the Remech. This is how they distinguish themselves from other ethnic groups. So we have the Amu, which people translate as the Asiatics. And then we have the Nehisu, people translate that as the Nubians. And then we have the Chemehu, who are the Libyans. And for some reason, people translate Chemehu as white people, but it's not. It's the Libyans. Okay, so I just want to kind of make sure everyone is aware of that. But so the point here is that when the Egyptians wanted to distinguish themselves from other populations of people, they did not use the word Kemet or the word Kemetiu. They chose to use the word Remech. And so what does this do? This answers the question. Let me go back to the text. This answers this other question. And did I scroll, miss it? Get my cursor back over there. So this answers this other question. Let me scroll back up. Into which ethnic category did they put themselves, and what did they call themselves? These 2 questions. And so Sanjeti answered the question. Remech would be their ethnic name, an ethnonym. And an ethnonym, remember, an ethnonym is a name that people are called by externally or internally, means self-named, in order to distinguish themselves from others. Okay? And so they distinguish themselves, as I've just shown and demonstrated, by the name Remech. So not only is Remech another name that they used to upgrade this statement here that we just went over. It won't let me highlight. Okay, this statement here, not only do we find Remech as another term, but it's an actual term that they actually use to differentiate themselves. So now it elevates from the meaning that Sanjeti gave as a generic meaning for people. Now it got elevated to an ethnonym because it's a word used to distinguish. Okay, so now I hope that's clear. All right. And let me see, what was another thing? Okay, and then there was another thing that that was said. I think you mentioned it, Sanjeti, was see if I can go to it. Okay, you had mentioned, I don't know if you want to repeat it, or if you can repeat it to refresh. You said something about the frequency and you said Kemetiu was mentioned one time, or how many times in the pyramid text?
Okay. So in the pyramid text, the Kemetiu is used once.
Okay.
Remech is used almost 80 times.
Okay. So now what I have on the screen that I'm sharing with everybody is that particular time that Kemetiu is used in the pyramid text. Okay. And so this comes out of the pyramid text of Neith, but as Sanjeti said, you had the pyramid text of Pepi the first, Pepi the second, Unez or Winez, and Teti. And so these pyramid texts, they correspond to each other, and it's a lot of redundancies. You know, just like the so-called Book of the Dead, it'll be repeated information for a different person. Okay, so this is what we have here. But in this particular set of lines, this is where we see the word Kemetiu, and I'm just going to highlight it for everyone to see here on the screen. And in the glyphs, you have the I6 and the G4 buzzard, and together those glyphs spell Kemetiu. And so I'll just read the English. It says, the mourner will call you as Aset. The jubiler will cheer you as Nebet Hut. You will stand before the shrines as Men. You will stand before those of Ethribis as Apis. You will stand in the wide lake as Sokar. Now notice that we have here as a translation, before those of Ethribis. Now the word Kemetiu is a relational adjective, aka a Nisbi adjective, and it means those pertaining to this place, Kemet. But this particular Kemet, as Sanjeti mentioned, is not the nation or the kingdom of Kemet, because remember what I said earlier, the kingdom of Kemet was not called Kemet until the 11th dynasty. So, like we have New York, this is a Kemet within Kemet. And this particular place was called Kemet Weret. Kemet Weret. And the main temple complex there was called Hut Irdi Ib. And it's from that word, Hut Irdi Ib, that you see up here, is where we get the Greek form of that word, Athribis. And in Coptic, it will be Athribi. So the Coptics, in Coptic, they call it Athribi. In Greek, they call it Athribis. But indigenously, it was called Hut Irdi Ib. That was the main temple complex there. So this is talking about you will stand before those who reside in Kemet, but this particular Kemet is Athribis. Now, as a side note, because like I said, we mentioned this before, and when we mentioned this before, someone in the chat had stepped in and said that this Kemetiu is speaking about the kingdom of Kemet because Athribis did not come until later. Okay, that was their claim. And so let me just share with you all real quick here, so we can kind of refute that with a demonstration of information. So here is also the pyramid text, and notice that this is a handwritten rendition of the pyramid text. Now we have the pyramid text of T. The T, the M, and the N stand for the three different people. So we have Teti, Merira, and then we have Neith. So this is what I meant by three people sharing the same kind of redundant text, just like the Book of the Dead. So in all three of these pyramid texts, what do we see? This, by the way, this is Spruk 342, spell 342 of the pyramid text. Okay, we see the word Kemet Weret here. This is Athribis. So this is an attestation of the gnome. This is a symbol for the gnome, and you notice that the I6 glyph is here, and then the bull glyph is here. Okay, Kemet Weret. This is the 10th gnome of Lower Kemet that we know today of Kemet, but it's a 10th gnome. And so it existed during the time the pyramid texts were written. So if anyone says that Athribis or Kemet Weret did not come until later, this is what you have to inform them about and share with them to let them know and to upgrade their understanding. All right. And so just to read, I have the translation. It's pretty small, so I'll read it out loud. What this is all saying is to say it is. Oh, that part is not in here. So I'll just read the part that's here. It says, "Come, see thy son. He has passed through the nome of Athribis. After he has passed through the region of the Weret crown." See the Weret right here? You have the Weret crown. The handbag of N is in the tun plant. So we have the tun, which is a plant. And we see the determinative of a plant here. And when it says in translations, when you read these scholarly works, in is going to be, it represents the king, or it represents the person that this text belongs to. So they put in to as like a variable, because obviously it could be Neith in this one, Teddy in this one, Peppy the first, Peppy the second, etc. Okay, so as an FYI. All right, so let me just make that clear. Hopefully everyone got that. So anyone making that claim, you just show them that information. All right. So does anybody have anything to add to anything we've said so far? And let me check to see how we're looking on time and to move forward. But the mic is open though, if anybody has anything else to add. No? All right.
I mean, of course, I always have, but I just want to give space for, the other brothers or our sister, if they want to comment on that.
Okay. Just real quick, I'm trying to see a good spot as a cutoff point, because like I said, when I first started, I don't want this video to be too long, and I labeled it as part 1 to kind of reserve for us to do this again as a continuation. So I'm trying to see where would be a good point to stop, because I do want to take some questions from the chat. And I see what's coming up is that may
Well, let's go ahead and do that. Take some questions. Let's address some of the questions in the chat.
Okay, okay, that's a good. All right, so listen up. So for those who are watching, I'm gonna stop at this point in terms of the text that we're going through, because the next paragraph that, as you can see on the screen, it's going to get into another point, and it's going to take some time for us to explain some grammar. See now we're about to get into a little bit of grammar, and so we'll reserve that for a part 2. So keep your eyes and ears open for part 2. So I'm going to move from here and go over to the chat. So now, if anybody has any questions in the chat based on what we discussed so far, feel free to go ahead and type it in. And if you type it in, prep it with @ and then Seshu, so I can see the question clearly. I see we had the brother Sarmutep in the chat. Again, I want to say peace to everyone in the chat. Really appreciate you all taking time out to hang with us. And remember, if you have any questions, now listen, the environment that we have here, and if you're not a normal follower of our channel, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell. That's number 1. But 2, realize that our Facebook group and our YouTube channel, we're designed to teach, and we leave it open to share information, to address and to clarify. Like, our goal is to make things clear and to follow the evidence wherever it may lead us. And so, if you have a question, don't be afraid to ask the question. Don't think your question is too silly, stupid, or anything like that. The only thing we ask is people to exercise good character and respect. Okay, that's it. That's we don't ask for much. So I don't want anybody to feel intimidated that they don't ask a question, or feel like we're going to get offended or snap back or any of that stuff. We try to keep it professional over here, and so on and so forth. All right. So because I like to encourage interaction. and I'll just read it. Okay, so Phi Lightentist asks the question. It says, is the N in Remich in Kemet meant to be a plosive? So I'll let someone else tackle that first, and then we'll go around.
Okay, so now you're talking about like its phonetic function, or is,
I guess by plosive they're probably talking about the articulation of it, the sound.
okay. So I mean the representation is it's akin to the nasolabial trill. So which you have R, rolling R, in L. Okay. So that's the phonetic of the N. All right.
Okay. Well, that's simple enough. So I think Asar also chimed in. It would be called, like, if you're looking it up in the IP. Now hold up. Now just real quick so people will know when questions. Huh?
Okay. So Asar said nasal. So
Okay,
that's the
yeah.
particular.
Okay.
So like these allows uvular trill, and then the N specifically is the nasal.
Okay, right. Now, just so people, here's another FYI. When you see questions like that, we have to understand that all of our letters of the alphabet, A through Z, they represent sounds, and these sounds have a specific scientific name. So, for instance, what we normally call a letter B and a letter P, when I say letter B and letter P, I'm talking about something that you see on paper. I'm talking about a script. But what is the sound that those letters represent? What is that called? And so we have names for all of the sounds of the English language. All right. And these sounds are referred to as phonemes or phones. All right. And all together within language, they call it the phonological inventory of a language. And so, for example, the letter P and the letter B represent voiced, bilabial, plosives. That will be the letter B. The letter B is called a voiced bilabial plosive. And what that means is that it's telling you the manner of articulation and the place of articulation. So a voiced bilabial plosive is voice, meaning you're going to use the vocal cords. There's going to be some vibration there. Bilabial means bi to, labia is lips. So you're going to use both of your lips. And then plosive is the way that the air is obstructed and then released as a blast, like explode. So voice bilabial plosive, that's the letter B. So we go B. Now P is the exact same thing with the exception that it's unvoiced. So a B and a P are the same. The B is voiced and the P is unvoiced. So the P is an unvoiced bilabial plosive. So there's no vocal cords involved. So a true sound of a P is really just not b, it's b. That's a P. So that's the difference. So when people ask questions about plosive or nasal and stuff like that, that's what they're referring to. All right. So I just want to let everybody know that, and hopefully the brother or sister, forgive me because I'm not sure, the name doesn't indicate, but Asar and Sanjay answered that as a nasal. All right. So okay, it says, okay, they have a follow-up question. An example, please. Maybe in modern terms, like in Swahili, you have the word ndogo, pronounced ndogo. Would be N, would the N be an N or an un, I guess. And we have a resident Swahili speaker on the panel, so maybe you can answer that question for them.
Could you clarify the question?
Okay, they're asking, would the N, first they asked, would the N be a plosive, and that and they were given an answer that no, it's a nasal. And so now they're asking for an example. So they said maybe in modern terms, like is like in Swahili you have the word ndogo, pronounced ndogo. Would the N be an N or an N?
It will be an N. If it's an N, you'd have to say ndogo, and that would be incorrect. So it would be ndogo.
Okay, so repeat that one more time.
So how you'd say it would be ndogo.
Okay,
So not ndogo.
okay, all right. So hopefully that's clear. So not ndogo, like you're putting an I or an E in front of the N. You just gotta start with your mouth closed. Is the best advice that people give in trying to pronounce the M as in Mary and N as in Nancy in Swahili. Start with your mouth closed, instead of open. Because if you start with your mouth open, you're gonna say N. But if you start with your mouth closed, you're gonna go and that's proper. Ndogo, not indogo. Ndogo. All right, mboli, not mboli. Mboli. Mvulana. Mwalimu. All right.
Correct. Yeah.
And I've learned that from my Swahili teacher.
Right.
All right. So, any other questions?
Yeah. So there's one. Seems like Zalex asked the next question.
Okay.
Okay. So the question, I want to read it. It says, "Is it fair to say that the people of Kemet, i.e., Remech and Kemet, did not name themselves after any ancestral name, but instead their name reflects the toponym? I don't know why I wrote it that way, as well as mythology, ram tears." All right, so let me go to the first part. Is it fair to say that the people of Kemet did not name themselves after any ancestral name? Well, that part of the sentence is an assumptive question, meaning it sounds more like you already made a conclusion. So did not name themselves after any ancestral name. No, it's not. But instead, their name reflects the toponym. Okay, so if we go back to Asar's presentation where he goes to a text, I can't remember right off the top, but the people name the land based on its characteristics. So Kemet being pretty much the same term as like Mary, and this has to do with agriculture, land with water flowing through it. This is what the name represents and refers to. And so they're not naming themselves based off of the toponym. Okay. Their ethnic name, as we went over earlier, is Remech. Mm-hmm. And the example at the bottom, when you say rem or tears, that has to do with paronymy. Okay, so they're not naming themselves after tears. It just so happens that the name for tear, rem or remu, has the R and M consonantal sequence, just like Remech. So then they created mythologies around it. So that's all that is, because it sounds similar.
Okay. I think that's hopefully that's satisfactory to the brother. The only thing I would want to compliment that response with is because we had mentioned this before, and I think the brother was on when we had talked about this before, was that we have to understand that writing in and of itself is very, very, very young. It's only approximately 5,000 years old, and that humanity, we've been Homo sapiens sapiens for a whole lot longer. And so this is where you get, the fact that we transmitted information from one generation to the other orally, and we had to be very, very creative in order to store knowledge and pass it on to the offspring and to the upcoming generations. And so during that period of time is when we developed mechanisms or methods to do that. And today we call it figurative expressions. So we created punning, we created paronymy, we created metaphors, hyperboles, all those things that we call figurative expressions. They were invented by people before writing, out of necessity. Okay, so imagine if you're a human born in one generation, and then the next generation always had to repeat what the previous generation already figured out. So every generation had to figure out what foods to eat, what foods to stay away from as poison, and so on and so forth. That would lead us nowhere. So we had to have a way of collecting data and passing it on. And so with that being said, myth is one of those devices that are used by ancient people to store information and pass it on. But today, the word myth is being looked at as something false and pseudo and fake and phony. But that's not the case. Myth was a very important tool. And it's just that you had to understand how it was encoded in order to understand how to decode it. So the Egyptians, like any other group of people, have a myth, as Sanjeti said, around their ethnonym, their name. And they use paronymy to pair it with the name they chose for themselves, which is a generic word for people. And then they tied it into their cosmogony and cosmology with the deity Ra, and say they come from the emanations of Ra. And so it's in the text that they come from the tears of Ra as humanity.
And I want to elaborate on a point regarding mythology. Mythology is extremely important. Why is that important? Because mythology encapsulates the collective psychology of any group of people. I'll say it again. Mythology encapsulates the collective psychology of a people. Mythology, it preserves historical thinking patterns. It preserves the values, the axiology, if you will, the study of values, Greek axios. So, for example, we know that mythology is not history, even though you can take a historical event and put it into mythology. However, it should not be taken literal. So whenever you have the characters or the subjects of a mythological account or story, and the meanings of their names matches the theme of the story, or at least a part of the story, we know that this is mythology. So all groups of people have this. And it also preserves the worldview of a people. That's why it's important. So, for example, like in Greece, the behavior of Zeus is held as highest value for the men of Greece. So the deviant behavior that he exhibited, the way he treated women, the way he treated young boys, the way he would fly down and swoop and take people, i.e. kidnapping. Okay, these are the highest values. Or if we go to in the Yoruba tradition, we know that the head is held as very high value. That's why the word for head, ori, is paronymy with the word ori for spirit. They're two different words, but they are enlikened, if you will. When we go into Kemet, I'd say that the consultation among groups is held as a high value. Like, for example, like in Ifa, or Orisha worship, you consult the oracle. You're always consulting. Well, you find this in Kemet because the Netcher Ra in the mythological story of the destruction of mankind, or humans, if you will, when humans are being deviant, instead of just outright destroying everybody, Ra consults with the council to get advice, even though he's the active head. Whereas when you go to the biblical account, you have something very different. Where humans are being deviant and Yahweh makes an individualistic decision and says, I'm going to wipe everybody out. Okay, these are two different paradigms. More on that later. Mm-hmm. But again, it shows the value, and then the people emulate the behavior. So that's that regarding mythology.
Okay, that's a good add-on to that. Hopefully everyone followed along and gets that. And that's I think that's very important, because I think people downplay myth because today's connotation, or the way people use the word today, as if to kind of turn the other way, raise an eyebrow to it, that it's fake, it's phony, it's false, and so on and so forth. And we have to really, really be careful with that. All right. And that's the difference between literal, real, and figurative. And I always suggest people to really study figurative expressions. And that goes for hyperboles, what's the rest of metaphors, what is it, allegories, all those different expressions and how they're used are things that was used in ancient times. But they were made like today we have fun with it, whereas back then it was necessary.
It was serious, yeah.
It was absolutely necessary, and that was the only way that you could actually store information that way. Today, the hip hop and rappers, take advantage of it, and some people are really, really good at it. All right, so just keep that in mind. I gave the link. Let's see, Brother Asar made it in. Oh no, so he's probably gonna pop in. I want to keep going until at least he gets a couple of words in. Was there any more questions? I'm looking. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, somebody had a question way before. I think I'd saved it, but I don't know if it's something that you guys want to touch on. But I just got I'll read it. It was from Oronde Branch, and the question was, where did Kemet means black people originate, and why has this discussion gone on for so long without a conclusion or consensus?
Okay, let me answer that real quick. I guess the brother probably joined us late, because that's the point of this this discussion. The name of, the meaning of Kemet, meaning black people, as in terms of their skin color and things, it originates coming from Cheikh Anta Diop. Okay, and Diop himself gives credit to another person, just in very passing way, and we don't have any more information on that particular person. But it originates, and that's what we're discussing. We're discussing a chapter that he wrote within the UNESCO's General History of Africa, Volume 2. And the whole chapter is called The Origin of the Ancient Egyptians. And this particular section is the Egyptians as they saw themselves. And it's from this particular section and, his periphery work where he repeats it. But this is the main portion where people are getting that from. And the second part of your question, why hasn't there been a conclusion? The short answer is because no one has actually done the work to apply the proper methods and tools to actually answer the question of whether or not for the meaning of this particular word. And so it's not until now, recently, that this work is being done. And so the brother Sarimotep has been dealing with this question for quite a while, applying the proper tools and all of the different areas So I don't know if he's in. I think he's in now, and that's probably a perfect segue for you to if you could do so in the shortest way you can. But if you sorry, if you could explain how etymology is actually addressed in those 6 different areas or whatnot, if you could kind of just reiterate that or whatever.
All right. Peace and blessings. Am I heard clearly?
Yes.
All righty. Peace to everyone on the panel. Peace to everyone listening. I can only be brief because I got a test to do in a little bit. But I just wanted to pop in and say, hey, I didn't have anything particular to say. But since you asked me that question, if I understand it correctly, you want me to explain basically how etymology is done?
Yeah. In regards to I guess it'll apply to any word. Like how do we actually perform etymological analysis? To come away with the etymology of a word. And I know you discussed it before.
Okay. Well, etymology, which is the study of the origin of words and their meanings, as well as their evolutions through time, is a branch of linguistics that is attached to historical comparative linguistics. And so there are 6 fundamental areas that etymology interacts with in order for us to get a as accurate as possible etymology of words. And so you have, as I said, there's 6, and you can evenly divide them into 2 spheres. 3 of them are linguistic, and the other 3 are what we call extra linguistic, meaning outside of the general study of linguistics. But they all come together to paint a picture in terms of the meaning of the etymological meaning and evolution of a particular word. So the 6 areas of focus for etymology is phonology, it is morphology. Well, let me back up. Phonology, the study of sounds and phones, what we call phones. Morphology, which is the study of the structure of words and how words are built. And then you have semantics pragmatics, which is dealing with the meaning of words and context. So those are the linguistic aspects of the etymological exercise. Then you have an extra linguistic, components. And that extra linguistic component is philology and culture and history. And so philology is closely related to linguistics, but it's not necessarily linguistics, primarily because it is restricted to cultures that have writing. And so you can only study text. That's what philology is the critical analysis of text. It may give you some insight into grammar and things of that nature, but is considered outside of the realm of linguistics. And then, of course, the sociological aspects of the culture, and then just the overall history of the people. And so history isn't linguistics, and culture isn't linguistics. But we use all 6 of these, we analyze all 6 of these areas, again, to give us insights and more accurate insights into the etymology of words. And so we start off with phonology. And what we do is, as again, this is a branch of historical comparative linguistics. This is one of the goals of historical comparative linguistics, is to do good etymologies of words. And so you're going to need 2 or more languages to compare. Because what you're going to do is you're going to create sets of words, the exact, words with the exact same meaning or similar meaning, and hopefully the similar structure in terms of the form of the words. And so you're going to be comparing every single phoneme, or the smallest unit of a word, which is a sound, the sound components of each, that is often when you're writing, that is represented by a letter, so to speak. You're comparing those between different sets. And what you're looking for is consistent matches between phonemes from one language, from language A to language B to language C, if you're doing, for example, 3 languages. And so we divide each word into, of course, consonants and vowels, and we're mainly looking at the roots of words. So we're looking at the root morpheme, and so that's the basic unit of a word that has meaning, that can take on affixes to expand its meaning in usage, or to modify its meanings in usage. So that's what we're primarily concerned with. And so, words have multiple consonants and vowels. And so we label them. For example, let's look at the word baba, in most African languages as father, and some it's mother in some African languages, but that's a pretty simple word. So baba is B-A-B-A. So we would compare it, we would break it down as B, consonant 1, A, vowel 1, B, consonant 2, A, vowel 2. So if we're looking at baba, father, and we're comparing it to another word for father in another African language, we're going to compare the first consonant in language A to the first consonant in language B, the first vowel in language A to the first vowel in language B, the second consonant in language A with the second consonant in language B, and the second vowel in language A with the second vowel in language B, assuming that language B has a similar form to the language A, which has baba, which we're comparing. So what we're doing this exercise so that we can establish, quote unquote, sound laws, or sound meaning correspondences. Because when we're doing the etymology and we're comparing using other languages, we have to make sure that the words that we're matching up with each other are in fact descended from a common ancestor. And so what we find in linguistics is that when words or lexemes are inherited in different dialects, which ultimately become languages over time, that they inherit phonemes from the parent language, which may go under some kind of alternations, but they remain for the most part in the structure of the proto-language. And so we can compare them between the various different languages. And so that's the first order of business. So of course, in that process, you're simultaneously looking at the semantics of it all. I'm sorry? Oh, I thought I heard. Okay. And the morphology, the roots, the prefixes, suffixes, and all that to the word. And so this helps to paint a more reliable picture when we're saying that a word in language A is in fact cognate with a word in language B. And so if the words under examination exist in a language that has writing, we examine the text of that particular language group, and we see how the word is being used in the context of sentences and paragraphs in that language. So that's where philology comes in. And in some instances, philology is actually where you start, because we don't have living representatives of those languages. For example, the ancient Egyptian. So since you don't have living representatives that speak the language natively, you have to figure out the phonology, the morphology, and the semantics, pragmatics in a different way. And so you start off with the philology, whereas you can, if the language doesn't have writing, of course you won't assess the philology, you know what I'm saying, of it all, because they don't have it necessarily. So but you have living speakers, and you can record and write down words and phrases in which they say, and you can create a grammar and a dictionary, you know, saying, for that language, for, you know, which a lot of linguists have been doing for languages around the world that don't have writing natively. So, and then of course, you know, we look at the culture of the people, and so this involves a study of the psychology of the people, their worldview. Because this helps to answer, you know, in many ways, how and what is valuable to them, and in what ways they use these words that is unique to their particular culture, you know. And then, of course, since we're dealing with diachrony, meaning, you know, a long time span, not just a specific time in a narrow specific time in space and time. This is where the history comes in. So we're looking at the evolution of these things. So hopefully I'm making sense without necessarily rambling too long. But you know, those are all the things that are involved in a good etymological analysis, you know, of words. And you can actually discover the meanings of words by doing a proper etymological analysis. And so this is what I've done with Kemet. And so we went through the necessary steps and we established the sound laws. Then I went back into these languages to see what words existed that coincided with how the word Kemet is being used in the actual text, as well as, see, we get a gift from the ancient Egyptians, because they drew classifiers at the end of words, which lets us know under what context, under what class or what category this current word belongs to. So given that they've given us that gift, that becomes an extra criterion from which to judge and discover the meaning of any obscure word in the ancient Egyptian language. And so the etymological analysis allows us to recover the meaning of obscure words by analyzing its cognates in related languages. But the first step is establishing the sound meaning correspondences in the phonological stage. So I hope I was clear.
All right. Now, you have said a mouthful, and hopefully everybody follow along, because I know you've explained it before. So for those who are hearing for the first time, please refer to Asar Motep's YouTube channel, where we had this discussion already. Okay, so I think it's one of the latest videos that are up on the channel. We had discussed. I think we were doing it part one of a discussion and critique and review of Dr. Mario Beatty's presentation at ASCAC. Okay, so, and I have on the screen, as you were talking, I was just trying to create a visual for people so they could take a screenshot of the 6 areas, 3 being linguistic and 3 being extra linguistic areas, and I just basically notated down for everyone as you were talking. So yeah, that's it. It was something I wanted to share while you were talking. Let me see if I can. Yeah, it was a question that was asked in the chat, and I think this is going to be our last one. So if anybody has a question, try to get it in now because I want to wrap it up. I want to keep this as a nice bite-sized video. But the question was, let's see if I scroll back. Okay, it's from Omar Reed. Well, first, before I answer that one, just real quick, back to the brother Zion Lex. He had asked about the name of the people coming from the toponym, and so I just wanted to remind him that the name Kemet that we know today for the entire kingdom, that didn't come about until the 11th dynasty. So you have to remember that the people were still people and they still lived there and was thriving. The old kingdom was flourish. Flourish. That's where you get the pyramid building and everything. So they didn't name themselves after the later toponym. So I just want to make sure that's clear to the brother that asked that. But Omar asked the question. He says, how did Mr. Beatty get the idea that Coptic is the heart of decipherment? And so let me just give some context to that question. Then I'll just open it up. For those who didn't watch the presentation, please watch it. Because it's best to hear directly from the person themselves instead of somebody giving commentary. But to kind of summarize it, Dr. Beatty's explanation, he accused the brother of Asarmotep of using an improper method, and what he used as a backing of that is the fact that he says that Asarmotep goes around Coptic. And that his logic is that how do we know the meaning of words is not to use Asar's method, which he just explained in those 6 areas, but instead deal with Coptic or as well and deal with Coptic, because he said Coptic is the end of the evolution of the language. And so he gave the example of how do we know what the phrase Asarmotep, what does it mean? And he said we know what it means because we can go to Coptic. And so his claim is that we have to go through Coptic. Bypassing Coptic is a no-no. And so now with that in mind, I wanna say this. As a matter of fact, Sanjay, you can help out. I'm gonna show something on the screen, and let me change my screen over. So what I have open is the Coptic dictionary, okay, and this is by Crumb. For those who let me get my cursor over there because I know it's small. Forgive me, I'm going to blow it up in 1 second, but I want to put the link to this inside the chat so that everyone can have this. This is available online. It's free, so make sure you get access to it. I put it in the chat. It's the Crumb's it's the Crumb's Coptic dictionary. Cerny has one. An author named Cerny, Jay Cerny, has an etymological Coptic dictionary, but this is the full Coptic dictionary that you see on the screen. So let me blow this up because I know it's small and it's probably blurry to everybody, because it's blurry to me. And in case you're watching on YouTube, you can click your cogwheel and change your settings to 720p. That will clear it up. But I'm gonna blow it up. Give me a
so I can't even see that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's eyes, so let me magnify this up a bit. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that a lot better. Let me blow it up one more time. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. Now this is the page where we start to see the word Kim, or the words that begin with Kappa, I guess that would be, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's on page 109. It's the previous page. Let me go to there. All right, so here we are. So, and now, so because we have some frat guys on here that knows the alphabet and can read it. So this particular word I'm pointing at, hopefully everyone can see my cursor. This particular word, can you give us the letters? What these letters are?
I'm gonna try to make that out. That's like really small. It looks like capital Mu, and that's like an O, and then a Mu.
Yeah.
Kappa, Mu, Omicron, Mu.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't see it that well.
Yeah, and forgive me for those in the chat. This is as big as I can get it without it being too big and blurry. Okay, so now this particular word is
Come
kamam.
on.
Right, kamam. Okay, now this word is the verbal form, and you can see here the verbal form, and it means to be or become black. All right. Now I'm gonna scroll down, and of course, now I just as a FYI, I want everyone to understand that this Coptic dictionary, all of the references that you see, most of the references that you see for where you can see these words used are coming from Christian text. Okay, it's coming from biblical text and biblically related text. All right, I just want everybody, like for instance, we see Leviticus 13 and 37, 13 verse 37, etc., etc. So a lot of these words, instances of these words, are coming from when the people who live in Coptic Egypt, they started to translate the Bible or Christian text into their language. Okay, and that's important to understand and to know. But anyway, this is the word kamam. And now we're going to the next word. So can you do the same with this word here?
I can't see.
It's Kame, so it's Kappa, Alpha, Mu, and then Epsilon.
Epsilon.
Okay. Now this particular word is the adjective form of the word Kim, which means black. It's an adjective black, and you can see it here. It says adjective black. And you see references in the book of Leviticus, the book of Zechariah, and so on and so forth. All right. So I'm just letting you all know that this is the adjective form. And how do you pronounce this again?
Kame.
Okay, Kame. All right. And the first one was what? How you pronounce that one again? This one?
Kamam.
Okay, Kamam and Kame. So
notice there's like if you go back, there's different dialectical variations. So you have that chai, it's more like a ch, type sound. So it's like him, or him, because you see that eta there.
Okay, so now
that Baharic and what is that? That's Sahidic, Acmimic, and Fayumic.
Yep. Okay, so that's what these letters stand for: Sahidic, Coptic, Fayumic, Coptic, Baharic, Coptic, etc., and Acmimic, Coptic.
Yeah, and just to add clarity to that, so if we go back up to Kamam, so Sahidic, that's one dialect. The next one, Fayum, that's another dialect. Fayum and then Sahidic, and then after that, that Kham with the Kai, that means right in front of it, it means that in those three dialects, Sahidic, Acmimic, and Fayumic, is in those three dialects.
Okay. All right. So hopefully everyone paying attention now. All right. So we're gonna go down. So now we haven't gotten to Egypt now. We haven't gotten to the place, the kingdom's name yet. Okay. I just want everybody to understand. So we have the verb, which means to be or to become black. Now we have the adjective, which means black, a property or an attribute of something. Now let's go further. Oh, skip to the next page. Now we're on to the next page, and now we have to go on down because this is a continuation. We're going down to the next one. Now this one here. So what is this one? And again, I know it's small, but
yeah. Sorry, you want to give it a shot? I think I see Mu in at the end, but
yeah, it's Kappa, Eta, Mu, Epsilon.
Okay.
Okay,
and how the next one is Chi, Eta, Mu.
Iota.
What is that? It's the I, so iota.
Okay, so now how do you pronounce the main one here, the Sahidic and Acmimic dialect version? The one you first.
I mean, it's a type of E, but I think it's longer. Like my chapter in Alpha is Eta Mu. So we don't say it any really differently than Epsilon. but I think epsilon is more of a short E, where eta is more of a long.
Long.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it on my phone. Okay, so I can see it better here. I was looking on the computer screen. Yeah, so that's kappa, eta, mu, epsilon. Yeah, so the eta is a long E. So Kemet.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Kemet. Now, this one is the name of the kingdom, and it's Egypt. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is to really answer the brother Omar Reed's question, is because Dr. Mario Beatty said and made the claim at the ASCAP conference that he asked the question, how do we know the meaning of these words? He said we have to use Coptic. And the fact that he believes Asar bypasses Coptic, which he doesn't, but he believes Asar bypasses Coptic, he says that's a no-no, and that's an incorrect method. And so the point I'm raising here is that even if we take Dr. Mario Beatty's advice and use Coptic, at no point ever in any Coptic dictionary or in any Egyptian dictionary for that matter does it define Kemet as black people. And I want to repeat that. At no time in this Coptic dictionary, no time in any Egyptian dictionary, does it define Kemet, I'm talking about the name of the kingdom, as black people. Nowhere. So if we were to take Dr. Mario Beatty's advice and go to Coptic dictionaries to ascertain the meaning of this word, we would never come away with Kemet meaning black people. So,
yeah, and in fact, just to make a point, this definition actually fits well with the position of Theophilo Benga.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which it doesn't agree. Dr. Theophilo Benga, in his book African Philosophy, he defines it as black land. He doesn't define it as black people or nation of blacks. And in here in the Coptic dictionary, because since our good brother was falsely accused of going around Coptic, we don't do that because here, we're sitting here using the Coptic dictionary, and we use Coptic in our writings. Here is defined as black land. So none of this even agrees with, neither does Theophilo Benga agrees with the definition that our ancestor Cheikh and Diop used.
And we also got to keep in mind that this is getting a little bit technical, but I think y'all can follow. Is that one of the first things a linguist will do when putting a description of a language together is the first thing they want to know are what sounds are contrastive and what sounds are allophonic. Now, what do I mean by that? For example, I use this example a lot. If I only have the sounds HT together written on a paper, what words in English can I make out of that? Anybody on the panel?
Did you say HT as in Tom?
Yeah, so HT, these are consonants, and we're assuming that there's some vowels in the vicinity of these words. So what words in English does the consonants H and T, with certain vowels in between, what words can it make?
Oh, I got you. Hit.
Hot.
Hit. Hat. So we got those three to work with.
You also have heat.
You have heat.
You have whore.
Wait, whore.
Oh, that's an R.
My bad. That's with a W.
I'm like, wait a minute
now. Even the sports call hut, like hut. That's a word. And even hut isn't a type of a house.
Hit, hut, hat, heat. Here, no, I mean here. What's the word I'm looking for?
Did we say hot already?
Yeah, we
Hate.
said hot.
How about hate? I know it's a vowel after
Yeah,
hate.
that's what I was looking for. Hate. But the point is, would you mistake hot and hut as being the same thing?
No.
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 Or hit and hat?
No, they're not the same.
They're not the same. The reason why they're not the same is because the vowels are contrasted, meaning you couldn't substitute one of those vowels for the other, in these words, and they would mean the same thing. So if that could happen, that would mean that these sounds are allophonic, right? And so you can substitute one of those vowels or consonants. So here's an allophonic example. So I deal with this with the plurals in English. So if we say cats, right? Cats is the plural of cat. So we have the grapheme S that represents graphically the plural, or at least one of the plurals in English. However, the true plural is a voice fricative sound. I mean, a voice sibilant sound. It's the Z. And so even though you write dogs, you don't pronounce it as dogs. You say dogs. So the S and the Z sound are allophonic in English in terms of the actual IPA values. And so, the plural Z becomes voiceless after voiceless plosives. So that's why cats is pronounced cats versus dogs, because the final consonant in the root morpheme dog is a voiced velar. And so in Coptic, eta and epsilon and alpha are contrastive sounds, which lets you know that in this case, when you're talking about the word Kemet, Egypt, it is different than kamam, to be black, or kame, to be black, or just the word, this the adjective form black. Now you have a dialectical variation of him that I think one has an eta in there, but that's due to the influence of the chai sound. But that's not the original. This comes later. So when you look at primarily in the dictionaries for Coptic, you will mainly see kamam and kame. But when it comes to kime, that's a totally different word, just in the same way that hit and hat are different words. So Coptic lets you know that they're different words. But you would have known that already had you actually looked at Middle Egyptian, because they have different classifiers. Now, having different classifiers may or may not coincide with different vowels, but that's something to be researched. But the different classifiers in Middle and Old Egyptian for these terms lets you know that they are different, because they never interchange. You never see Kemet, the country, written with the D3 hieroglyph. or the pellet glyph. These are the two glyphs that are used to indicate color in the ancient Egyptian language. And so notice that when I talked about doing etymology, there's a whole thing called morphology. And morphology has to deal with the structure of words. So in Middle Egyptian, the word Kemet is written with a root kim, km, and then you have a suffix t. That suffix t is absent in Coptic. So I can't compare the full word Kemet using Coptic with any other language because Coptic would not indicate this particular graphical morphological grapheme. It is missing. Not also to indicate that we're also missing the classifiers, which gives us some greater context, which Coptic doesn't give us. So when I made my comparisons, I made sure that the languages that I used all matched in terms of phonology and morphology, so that I have an accurate etymology of the word Kemet and not some random hodgepodge of lookalikes, like somebody who I won't name at the moment. But that's neither here nor there. So Kemet in Coptic is not spelled the same. If Kemet derived from Black and they evolved equally into Coptic, you would not have these different pronunciations. Kemet or Kemi would be spelled just like it would be either spelled Kame or it would be spelled Kamon or Kamomet or something to that nature. But it's not. They're different words. And we would have known that just looking at Middle Egyptian.
So that reinforces the greater point of logic now, because you like you said some things, and I think everybody should have followed along with what you were saying, even though it's technical. But I think that you explained it to where everybody could follow it. But for those who just want to deal with the logic of the issue, I just want to reiterate it: the fact that Dr. Mario Beatty said that you have to use Coptic, go through Coptic to ascertain the meaning. And so with that logic, what I want everybody to do is to go to any Coptic dictionary. I gave a link for one. Go to Cerny's, whatever one you want to look at, and find the word Kemet for the name of the place we know today as the Arab Republic of Egypt. Find that word and show me where it says that it means black people. You will not find that word defined as black people anywhere in any of those dictionaries. So what does a person like Dr. Mario Beatty do in that instance? Because on one hand, he's saying you got to use Coptic to ascertain the meaning. But when we do that, we listen to him and we do that, we don't see black people for that meaning. But he will tell us that it means black people. So the question is brought up again. How do you know it means black people? And so what's going to end up happening, or what everybody should see at this point, is that Asar Imhotep's method of and what he explained is the method that has to be used. There's no way around it, even for Dr. Mario Beatty. And so at the conference, just a little add-on. At the conference, there was no question and answer and no dialogue between the participants to flesh that out. So that never got teased out and asked and answered and so on and so forth. So hopefully everybody is following along with these videos. But again, I don't want to be too long. But go ahead.
Let me make this point. At the time that Dr. Mario Beatty made the statement that where he basically was scholastically scolding the Tsar, you know, saying that basically, you know, his linguistics is really not the correct, but this is where Obinga's method is the correct method. Well, what, you know, one of the things I would have brought up in the question and answer period is if Obinga's method is the correct method, that means that according to that logic, if I apply it, that means that Diop's method is the wrong method.
Exactly.
Okay. If we follow Dr. Mario Beatty, okay, you know, who's extremely intelligent, definitely someone to follow in scholarship. But on this point, it didn't help because the conversation, the topic was on the meaning of the word Kemet. Okay.
Exactly.
So, you know, if Obinga's method is the correct method, and
hold on. Obinga's method is not the correct method for the simple fact that Obinga never did any research on it. No method. All Obinga is doing is repeating what's in a dictionary in terms of Kemet means black land or the black country.
Right.
So we got to understand this. This is my research question. This is a research question I asked 20 years ago and have been researching ever since and have gone through the process of the methods necessary to answer the question. Neither Obinga, neither Diop, neither Neb, neither Reggie, neither Dr. Mario Beatty. None of them have done this research. They're only responding to fragments of the research that I have leaked to the public. And because they haven't done this research and they don't have the background that I have, they make up all kinds of arguments, nonsensical at that, and contradictory and self-annihilating when it comes to particular arguments. And so there's a way that you have to, you cannot find one published paper by Theophile Obinga on the etymology of the word Kemet. It doesn't exist. Neither with any of these people I'm talking about. And so we got to understand when people have an opinion versus they have come to a conclusion because they've done a serious analysis on the term. Obinga doesn't do that type of analysis. He's more of a broad researcher because he's focused on trying to reconstruct a language family. So he doesn't deal with individual words and their etymologies. He doesn't spend his time focused like that. Neither was Diop. And so we got to understand what that means. Even people like, for example, Jean-Claude Mboli, he gets closer, but there are certain things that he misses because he's looking at a broader picture. Whereas I have been focused on this one particular word for a very long time and have went through all 6 of these areas to answer this question. And so this is the method of, for example, like Bilolo. Bilolo takes on individual words. And so this is when I started, dealing with Bilolo. I picked up some techniques on how to approach certain things. But I combined that with the techniques, just from the standard historical comparative method and the analysis of semantics from Mboli. And this was what helps me get a clearer picture that none of them could possibly get because they're just not that focused on the term. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of reading in the different areas, and they just haven't been focused like that. And so this is why they're all over the place. Why why, in at least two in particular, but one definitely in particular, he has a comprehension problem. So, he's making arguments now that Kemet is not even a toponym. It is a collective noun. So he doesn't even understand that Kemet is the name of a place and that toponym means place name literally.
Yeah, and that's why that was the first point of entry in the discussion, is to make sure everyone understands that Kemet is indeed a toponym. All right, so now we kind of definitely went over time and everything. So just a last call for any questions in the chat. So if you have a question that that you've been sitting on, please type it in very, very quickly. And hopefully it's concise, and we'll try to be as brief as possible in our answer if we can. Hotep, Brother Antoine, you got any words for us tonight?
Yeah, Hotep, apologize for my tardiness. Want to how my mic sound? Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed Beatty, when he did his introduction about Coptic, he initially used Asar as is found in Coptic. Also, he used Imhotep as is found in Coptic as his example to lead in to Kemet. So I seen that little shot or slide comment. But then on the flip side, I seen Asar with your presentation where you used Wretched, Hesse to go back at him for his example. So that's my comment. My question deals with I kind of state this from initial beginning of the whole conversation, and that was the fact that even with the logic that's being presented, what's really the issue is just the emotional attachment. And that emotional attachment may have come from that time period of romanticism, of Africanism, or what have you. But I see that as more the issue with the gentleman we're dealing with, or the gentlemen that have a disagreement, as opposed to them actually understanding the logic or even understanding the methodology that's being presented.
Okay,
I'll go first on that. Mm-hmm. So, if we were to be circumspective, meaning looking at all angles or as many angles, perspectives as possible, and being sympathetic and empathetic in this, because of the Ma'afa, we understand that, we've been historically and currently battered and bruised mentally and physically, and of course thrown into the status that is quote unquote black. All right. So where Europeans have taken the term for color and used it as a status. And this of course creates problems later on, which I get to in a second. So, psychologically, we took this term black or Negro and turned it into a positive for ourselves, for our own mental health, justifiably so. Okay. So of course, I'm black and I'm proud, those songs. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with, making a positive out of a negative. So we have to keep that in mind as to where the attachment comes from. Okay. We can't divorce that from the conversation or our comprehension as to the motivations of our brothers and sisters and our mothers and fathers who have an emotional response, because we're also members of the same group. So we should have that understanding. So now, scholastically, when we're doing this research into ancient cultures, it creates a problem of paradigm. Because we're responding to racism and white supremacy, if you will. Okay. And we're backtracking to ancient Kemet, and we find a word, Kem. The word for black in Egyptian is Kem, but not understanding, or at least applying the logic that there are other words with Kem, and that the word Kemet, it has to do with preparing land. We didn't use that logic, so we found something that would add to our sense of self, justified self-importance, which all people should have. And on top of the fact that we know that this is an African culture, an African civilization, so that adds to our renewed pride in who we are as a people, collectively, if you will. Okay. But again, it creates a problem because we are now taking concepts, social constructs that was formulated by Eurasians, and now we're putting it on ancient people who did not espouse those concepts. Why would a nation predominantly African, as we understand it, people with darker hues? Of course, you're going to have exceptions to the rule. You also have foreigners who live in Kemet as well. But remember, Europeans are not of any political significance on the collective scale. Not to the point where the Egyptians have to redefine themselves by their skin color. That is illogical for them. In fact, even brothers and sisters who are on the continent today, if you say, hey, you're black, a lot of them will feel offended. Like, what are you talking about? Even now. So why do we think that the ancient Egyptians have this have this racist logic, or they're not responding to racism, white supremacy? There's no such thing as racism, white supremacy at that point in history. It's illogical. Now, we will take pride in the fact that they are African people. That is no doubt. That has been demonstrated 100 times over. But they don't need to call their country the land of black people. That's illogical. And that is not a downplay on who we are at all. So, I hope I'm giving some context and answering your question, bro.
I hope you did too, because that was a mouthful. And we've definitely gone over the 2-hour mark, so I really need to just
submit in linguistic journals. You get y'all understand.
Who's playing that?
Simple logic.
Oh, my bad. That was me.
Okay. So any closing remarks? So let me just do a quick review, and just for people who didn't catch the beginning, and I know it's 2 hours, and
let's go ahead and wrap it up.
I really appreciate everyone for tuning in, and make sure you come back to this video, listen to it again, let it play while you're cleaning up your room, while you're straightening up your desk, or doing some work on a computer. Let it play so you can hear it again. But just a quick review. We started off. Remember, this discussion is about Cheikh, the great and late Cheikh Anta Diop's chapter within Volume 2 of UNESCO's The General History of Africa. His particular chapter is the origin of the ancient Egyptians, and this particular section is the Egyptians as they saw themselves. And so we started by reading it, and he asked excellent questions on the onset, and those were just real quick to go back to it. How did the ancient Egyptians see themselves? Into what ethnic category did they put themselves, and what did they call themselves? So, to summarize what we did, we answered the question, how did ancient Egyptians see themselves, by going to the artwork itself. And I gave several examples, and I implore everyone to, do the same. Go to Google or whatever, look at images, and look up every dynasty. Go in chronological order. Start with dynasty 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 30. You probably won't find color surviving artifacts for all of those dynasties, but when you look it up, you'll find plenty of pictures. And then you ask yourself, what pigmentation did the scribes use as a standard to depict themselves, and what color? And as I showed, it was reddish brown, not black. So that's how they saw themselves. At least that's how they represented themselves to the world. Okay. And then we got into the ethnic category question because of the next statement of the fact that Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves, which is Kemet, meaning the blacks or the Negroes, literally. And so that's what brought us into the word remich to demonstrate that is an incorrect claim to make. One, that it was only one term, and then we didn't even get into the meaning of that particular term as of yet. So coming up in a future session discussion like this is that we're going to continue and go into the grammar of the next two paragraphs within this section of the chapter where he talks about the feminine singular and the fact that it's the adjective and all of that good stuff. So we're going to talk about that. So make sure you keep your ears and eyes and ears open for that and have your pen and pad ready for it. And also we discussed the proper way of ascertaining meaning through the process of etymology, which is the study of it all. But there's 6 different categories, 3 being linguistic and other 3 being non-linguistic or extra-linguistic. Sorry, I touched on that. Sanjetti broke down further about the remich, different forms, how many times it's attested in the pyramid text as opposed to Kemet or Kemetiu, and so on. And so that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what we've covered and extra tidbits here and there. And so does anybody have any closing remarks so we could close out? Yes, no, baby, so?
The words of the ancestors are written in books. Open and read them. End quote. From the Instructions, Larry Copper.
All right. Okay, so be on the lookout. And again, hit subscribe. Oh, I cannot end without showing this again. Pardon me. Remember to pick up the latest, or actually our first text between the Sesh Shimsu Heru research team. That's myself, the brother Sanjetti, the brother Asar Motep. So all 3 of us are here and present. And we wrote essays to complement the ASCAC conference that just recently happened on this question of the meaning of a place named Kemet. So the book is entitled A Contribution to the Debate on the Meaning of the Place Named Kemet. It's available on Amazon. Make sure you get it, study it, and we look forward to your feedback, your commentary, your critique, and your questions. All right, so take time.
Matter of fact, we should in the future, let's say in 2 weeks or so, take questions from people who actually have purchased and read the book.
Okay, that's a good idea.
And, get the questions early so we can prepare slides and answers, to clarify anything that they may have. Clarify any points and questions that they may have.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. So we're gonna set that up and get that going in about 2 weeks' time. All right. So well, if no one has anything else to add to it, and again, I just want to remind everybody that our job, and I hope I speak for all of us, that what we are making an attempt to do is to edify and clarify these issues and share information, and we're following the evidence wherever it may lead us. And so some of us have time to focus on these different areas. Some of us have accumulated the necessary tools and know how to use these tools to ascertain and to flesh out answers to critical questions and so on and so forth. And we're presenting this information. And so it's really about teaching. And so feel free to join us in this journey. And if you have questions or other information that you want to share, then by all means, share it. And we have a Facebook group, the Sesh Netcher Facebook group, and we kind of keep it that kind of environment. We're very respectful, keep it polished and professional, and we're open minded, but at the same time, we are also aware of, we have trolls, we have people who spam, we have immaturity that's going on. So we definitely guard ourselves against that, but we welcome everybody. All right, everybody in on the conversation and discussions. All right, so just understand when you're dealing with us, you're gonna have some pen and pad in hand, or have your notepad open, your tablet open, or your phone ready. All right. So with that, I'll say Shalom Hotep, unless no one else has anything to say. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and Shalom Hotep. Till next time.
All right, Shalom Hotep.